Okay, what we're looking at now is how to export to Substance Painter so we can do some texturing in there. If you watched the Photoshop video, you saw how we used it for 2D, just exporting a flat UV wire image and painting under it. But now with Substance Painter, we want to do painting directly on the surface. So now this is a shot of Substance Painter, but it's this is the full-blown working with PBR, working for like modern next gen games with full lighting and crazy effects. But what we have here in the portal is a 3D character, and here we have a bunch of layers of materials textured onto it. We have paint properties, you know, so there's a fair bit going on. We're going to use it in a much simpler way. We want to bring our model into a 3D port and just paint on it. So we need more than just, we don't need to export our UV set. What we need is our actual model exported. And currently, what's going on over here? This is a bit exciting. Let's look at it outside the UV editor in just regular modeling mode. And there we go. There's our normal view. So we need to get this guy out. So when you go between programs, just like in Photoshop, you wouldn't try to open a PSD in, say, a regular photo viewer, or some of the other painting programs might not support it. We need some common format that it'll speak. Well, Painter itself, so let's open up Painter over here. So we've got Substance 3D Painter. If you haven't installed it yet, go ahead and install it from Creative Cloud. I'll make another little video about that separate rather than getting diverted. But here's Substance Painter. I'm going to reset it just to make sure we see the same thing when you first open it. So there's nothing in here yet, but this will be the program where when you create a new project, it requires, so you set up a template for what way you're going to work in it. And if we just pick, it doesn't really matter too much what one we use. We're just going to use the Adobe material because we're going to be working without the lighting anyway. But we need a file. And when you go to click on file, you'll see that what it supports are mesh files, which is down here. We'll just make this a little bit smaller, shall we? This is quite gigantic. So like in any file open dialog in Windows, you can see what sort of stuff it accepts. So USD, which is a Pixar format. We've got OBJ, which is an old classic. And FBX is one that Autodesk has popularized. So that's what we need. So don't worry about the rest of the stuff on this dialog. It's just, like any program, if you go File Open and you see what it wants, that's what we need. So let's go back to Maya. We need to export this guy as an FBX. So first and foremost, you have to have something selected, right? So we'll select our guy and just double check that we've deleted all our history before we do anything. And we're going to go File, Export Selection. So there we go. And we want to pick the options. We did a similar thing when we exported for Sketchfab. We exported an FBX, if I remember correctly. So we're going to export as that. And when we hit export selection, we'll get it asking us where we would like to send it and how we'd like to handle our FBX exports. So first things first, we're going to go up to our texture. This is our assessment project. We've got Ref, Maya, Photoshop, and exports. Remember I told you about that? Well, in exports DynoDog, I'm going to make what should I do? I'll just say DynoDog for painter.fbx. Or you could call it DynoDog underscore game res.fbx. That would work as well because at the moment, once we've finished with it in Painter, we want to go out to Sketchfab or somewhere else anyway. So I think it's alright to just call it DynoDog game res for now. I'll just do it like that. Dynodog game res. Now, we don't need to include these other inputs. I've got include texture info on. I don't think it matters too much, but you can see that I haven't selected any of this stuff. All I've left is triangulate. Triangulate's a good one. I might explain it later or in class if people want to know more detail, but essentially it makes the model look predictable. We don't want animation, so we don't want cameras or lights, so I'll just collapse those, but just so you know, we don't want those. And if we come down to FBX file format, binary FBX 2020 is what I'm using. Should be fine either way. Units, that's another important one. So units automatic. So really, no included inputs. All of this stuff ignored except triangulate. None of those things. And scale factor 1. Export selection. And let's have a look in that folder. Where is it? Here's my folder, exports Dynodog. So next to the UV lines, which we exported before, now we've got Dynodog game res.fbx. And actually, I think Windows now can preview 3D objects, so it reckons it's gonna take a crack at it, but man, that's a bit slow. All right, let's open it and see what we've got in Substance Painter, because that's the goal, to get it in there. So, File, New. So when it says Select File, that's the mesh it's going to use. That's the thing that will eventually go into a game. So I'm going to go into my Exports Dynodog, select it, hit Open. Now it's going to want to know a few things. What resolution is my texture going to be? We'll say 1024. What normal map format is it going to use? DirectX. That stuff doesn't matter because we're not using these features anyway. We're not using the UV tile workflow. We're not importing cameras. We're definitely not auto unwrapping. We don't want it to create another dodgy UV set. We want the one we made. There's nothing to import. There's nothing here that we should have to change. So really the only thing that matters is what the file is and that we're using this PBR, metallic roughness, which is, the first thing after select template. Really nothing too much to think about. Let me just take a screenshot for that so you guys can refer to it later. I'll make sure that that's open in Snip and Sketch so I can use it later. Okay, let's see what happens when we try to import. What we should see, there we go, is our little fella. And you'll notice it honors the hard and smooth edges from the original mesh. You can see over here, we've got our texture set list. Now we're only using one texture across the whole model, so we can close that. And then we have our single layer. Here we have our paint properties, and here we have some libraries. We don't need libraries, so we're going to close the assets window for now. We might need to open it again for brushes, but for now, we don't want it. We can use the same controls in here that we used in Maya. So Alt and then left mouse drag, middle mouse drag, and you can do your normal zoom or you can hold down Alt and right drag, which gives you a finer grain without the mouse wheel roll deciding it. Okay, let's quickly, so here we have just a layer and it doesn't tell you anything except that it's a layer. You could paint directly into this using a paintbrush. I'm going to use, really quickly, I'm going to make a fill layer. A fill layer is just like a new layer where the whole thing is full of color and you just pick a color. So I'm going to hit this one here, add a fill layer. And it's going to create a new one and it's going to fill it with gray or, like a white gray. And here we have the properties of our fill. Now I'm going to drag this over here, put it on the left side of the screen so we can see all the stuff that's in it. There's a whole bunch of stuff we don't need to know, right? We're going to turn all those off because the only thing we need is it filled using our UVs with a base color. Can you see that? So if we really wanted to hide all this stuff, we could just look at this. That's the important bit. What's our material? It's a color and it's gray. If we changed it, we would get, say, whatever base color we want for this guy, and then we could paint over the top. We still have the problem of the fact that he's a bit shiny. And that's going to be the case because it's using lighting, and we don't need lighting. So rather than trying to get substance into some weird place where it uses like an old school render or anything, all we need to do up here where it's previewing the material, we can just change to one of the channels and see how we're using our base color. We can just change to base color and that's it. And that's good. You can see some glitches here where I've not quite married up the edge of the eyeball to the edge of the eyelid. But we have a problem. When we had lighting, we could see our object and we could sort of texture and paint around it. But much like Maya, in order to work, or in Photoshop, in order to paint and see what we're doing if we don't have lighting, what we need is some wireframes. So we can do that in Substance Painter by turning on. Well, actually, we're gonna leave it at that. That was our getting started with exporting from just exporting an FBX from Maya and getting it into Substance Painter to get started working. I'm going to quickly save it. So File, Save As, or File Save. And I'm going to make another folder. So within our project, we had exports, Maya, Photoshop, and reference. I'm going to make a new folder called, I'll never guess. All right, it doesn't have a little, it doesn't have, oh, there it is. There's new folder. Or you can right click here, but I'll click new folder and call it painter underscore underscore dino dog. And I'll go into that folder and I'm going to call it dino dog underscore texture dot 001 dot spp and hit save. And we have our guy ready to work on. Next, we'll have a look at how to make it flat again, but with wireframe so we can see what we're doing. And then we'll start trying to use just a simple paintbrush.